The galaxy stretched across the void, a sprawling web of stars, planets, and power. Within this galaxy, a handful of species stood at the peak, their influence extending across countless systems, their technology centuries ahead of any other. Among these species were the Dral, towering beings of telepathic might, the Venar, masters of energy manipulation, and the Iltharians, genetically perfected warriors. They considered themselves the pinnacle of evolution, the undisputed rulers of the universe. Humanity, however, was a curious anomaly in this tapestry of galactic power. While humans had survived and expanded, they were considered primitive by galactic standards. Their technology was crude, their military methods outdated, and their societal structure disorganized. The advanced species of the galaxy saw humanity as little more than a curiosity, a rough draft in the grand scheme of cosmic evolution. At the heart of the galaxy's political landscape was the Galactic Council, an assembly made up of the most powerful species from across the galaxy. The Council convened in a massive, opulent chamber aboard the Elder Star, a space station that orbited the capital planet of Zorath. It was here that the fate of humanity was to be decided. The room was filled with representatives of the galaxy's most dominant races. Tall and imposing, the Dral counselor sat at the center of the long table, his mental presence radiating an overwhelming sense of authority. Beside him, the Iltharian general, a stoic figure clad in gleaming battle armor, glared down at a display of human progress. The Venar diplomat, their thin, crystalline skin glowing under the station's artificial lights, observed humanity's technological developments with a mixture of skepticism and disdain. "It is time we make a decision." The Dral counselor's voice boomed in the room, his telepathic transmission vibrating the air. "The humans are an unpredictable element. Their species has survived far longer than expected, but they remain chaotic, weak." A low murmur spread across the room as the Iltharian general nodded in agreement. "Their technology is primitive. I've witnessed their military strategies firsthand. They rely on brute force rather than finesse. They will never survive." The rigors of galactic conflict. The Venar diplomat was less direct but equally dismissive. "Their technology is inconsistent. Their understanding of the fundamental forces of the universe is incomplete. The humans are little more than pests, playing at being more than they are." The human representative, an officer by the name of Captain Jonathan Hale, stood among them. Looking nothing like the hardened, experienced leader he truly was. He was a man dressed in standard-issue combat gear, his face expressionless as he listened to the alien factions tear apart humanity's potential. Though outwardly calm, he could feel the pressure mounting, a storm of doubt and derision swirling around him. "Perhaps it is time," the Dral counselor continued, "that we give them one final test." A hush fell over the room as the council turned their attention to the Dral leader. He looked over his shoulder to a smaller screen showing the vastness of the galaxy, a visual reminder of the civilization that stood in judgment of humanity. "We will allow humanity to participate in a galactic competition," the Dral said with a wave of his hand. "A trial to prove their worth or seal their doom. Several species will showcase their superiority, their technology, and their might. Humanity will compete alongside them, forced to prove they have a place among us. Should they fail, the decision will be final." The Venar diplomat added, "We can never risk allowing a species this volatile to gain more power." Captain Hale's jaw clenched, but his eyes betrayed no emotion. He knew what this was, a test designed to fail. The aliens were curious to see how humanity would perform under the weight of their superiority. They would display their advanced technologies, their enhanced soldiers, their mastery of the universe's most elusive forces. And humanity? Well, humanity would be forced to show what they had: crude tools, rough-edged tactics, and a will to survive that the galaxy's most refined species could never truly understand. The grand arena was set, and one by one, the alien species demonstrated their might. First, the Dral brought forth their telekinetic warriors, beings capable of lifting entire buildings with their minds, bending space around them. The spectacle was awe-inspiring, and the humans stood on the sidelines, eyes fixed on the display of raw power. Next, the Vener stepped forward, showcasing their energy-based weaponry, beams of concentrated energy that could cut through metal like butter. The beam arced through the air, disintegrating objects in its path. The humans, standing side by side with their alien counterparts, watched, unable to comprehend the technology that allowed such devastation. Finally, the Iltherians presented their genetically engineered soldiers. Humans would call them monsters. Perfectly conditioned for combat, the Iltherians' warriors were a blend of strength, agility, and resilience. Their bodies were enhanced to withstand unimaginable amounts of pain and to heal at accelerated rates, making them nearly indestructible. The council members turned to the humans, knowing that the stage was now set. The audience waited in silence as Captain Hale and his team stepped forward, their weapons outdated, their armor old-fashioned. They were outmatched in every conceivable way. But Hale's face remained unmoved as he gave no hint of his true intentions. He knew this would be no ordinary contest. As the other species' demonstrations came to a close, Hale addressed the council. "We may not have the weapons or the technology of these great species," he said, his voice steady, "but we have something they will never have: adaptability. Humanity does not need perfect technology to succeed. We only need the will to survive." The alien representatives exchanged skeptical glances. Hale's words were bold, but they lacked the substance that could truly impress the galactic elite. He could feel their disdain, their condescending thoughts weighing down on him. It was then that a new development began to unfold, one that Captain Hale could not yet fully comprehend. As the test began, a strange feeling began to creep into the atmosphere of the grand arena. A faction within the Galactic Empire had been quietly working against humanity's participation, convinced that if humanity were to succeed, it would disrupt the natural order of galactic dominance. The shadows moved unseen as this faction began to manipulate the trial from behind the scenes, making subtle changes to the rules, shifting the playing field, and placing humanity at an even greater disadvantage. Captain Hale, though outwardly calm, sensed that something was wrong. His instincts told him this trial wasn't as simple as it appeared. He had been trained to notice the smallest inconsistencies, and the closer he looked, the more he began to feel that the competition was rigged. Humanity was being set up for failure. But Hale was no fool. The Galactic Empire had underestimated humanity before, and they would do so again. As the trial commenced, humanity's entry was ridiculed. The first challenge was a test of endurance, a race across an impossible alien landscape filled with deadly terrain and hostile environments. While the other species glided effortlessly through the challenge, humans struggled, stumbling through the harsh conditions, their outdated equipment failing them at every turn. The aliens watched, convinced that humanity's weaknesses were on full display, and yet Captain Hale kept his gaze fixed on the horizon. He saw the hidden threats, the traps set by unseen forces. He had prepared for this moment. As the other species celebrated their victories, Hale's mind was already working, calculating, planning, and setting up the inevitable. He would make them regret underestimating humanity. The tension in the grand arena was palpable as the alien species took their turns showcasing their unparalleled might. Each demonstration was a spectacle, designed not just to impress, but to humiliate humanity's primitive technologies and abilities. First, the Draal stepped forward, their towering forms casting long shadows over the arena floor. These beings were no mere warriors, they were telepaths. Their psionic abilities allowed them to manipulate the very fabric of reality. The Draal commander raised a single hand, and a nearby column of stone began to levitate, twisting and turning as if guided by some invisible hand. Then with a sudden flick of the wrist, the column disintegrated into dust. A murmur of awe rippled through the spectators. "Behold," the Draal leader's voice echoed through the arena, "we are not bound by the laws of your material world. Our minds are our greatest weapons." The aliens in the audience nodded, impressed by the demonstration of raw psychic power. The humans, however, exchanged uneasy glances. While they admired the display, It only served to highlight their own technological inferiority. Next, the Venar took the stage. These beings, crystalline and sleek, possessed an uncanny ability to manipulate energy. They demonstrated this by summoning a storm of raw electrical power, gathering it into a shimmering orb that hovered above their hands. With a wave of their arms, the orb shot out in a burst of concentrated energy, obliterating a distant target. With pinpoint precision, the Venar diplomat spoke with cold efficiency. This is the power of energy manipulation. With this ability, we can level entire cities, vaporize armies, and control the flow of stars themselves. The humans stood silently, unable to respond, their outdated weaponry nothing more than toys compared to the power on display. The once confident faces of the human representatives were now filled with doubt. Finally, the Itharians stepped forward, their genetically engineered soldiers making their entrance with perfect synchronization. The Itharians were a race of warriors, bred for battle from birth. Their enhanced musculature and reflexes allowed them to perform feats of physical prowess, beyond human comprehension. One soldier was chosen to demonstrate his superior strength. He lifted a massive weight, a vehicle to be precise, with one hand and crushed it into a ball of twisted metal, all while displaying the kind of indifference that only the Itharians could muster. The general overseeing the Itharians' performance gave a smug smile. "We are the ultimate expression of physical perfection. This is what true strength looks like." The alien audience responded with thunderous applause, impressed by the Itharians' raw might. Meanwhile, humanity's place in the competition seemed ever more tenuous. The humans, standing at the edge of the arena, could only watch as the demonstrations of alien power grew increasingly overwhelming. It was now humanity's turn. The human team, led by Captain Jonathan Hale, stepped forward into the arena, their hearts heavy with the weight of the challenge ahead. As the arena doors opened, the protagonist's team was greeted with jeers from the alien representatives. The humans were given their equipment, a mix of old and outdated weapons, some even scavenged from past wars. The most advanced item in their arsenal was a plasma rifle, far inferior to the alien energy weapons they had just seen. With grim resolve, Hale led his team into the simulated battlefield, a harsh and unforgiving landscape designed to test their combat skills. The environment was a jungle with treacherous terrain, thick foliage, and the constant threat of hidden dangers. The aliens had arranged the arena to showcase not only the humans' lack of advanced technology, but also their vulnerability in the face of alien competition. As the simulation began, the human team encountered their first obstacle, an ambush. A pack of alien warriors from the Vorak species emerged from the underbrush, heavily armored and armed with plasma swords. The humans, armed with rifles and simple combat gear, were caught off guard. Their weapons fired ineffectively against the aliens' superior armor, and their tactics, while skilled, seemed slow and ineffective against the Vorax's aggressive assault. Hale's team fought valiantly, but it quickly became clear that they were outmatched. One of the human soldiers, unable to penetrate the enemy's defenses, was struck down. Another, while trying to flank the Vorax warriors, was hit by a volley of plasma bolts. As the battle raged on, the human forces were pushed back, retreating deeper into the jungle to regroup. The alien spectators watched with growing amusement. The Venar diplomat scoffed. "Is this the best they can do? I expected more from such a unique species." The Itharian general exchanged a knowing look with the Draal counselor, who merely nodded. Humanity's failure was becoming evident, and the test was proving to be the humiliation they had all anticipated. Despite the mounting failure, Captain Hale remained calm. His face was a mask of unwavering focus. While the rest of his team struggled to hold their ground, Hale's mind was working on a different level. He had never intended to win this battle, not in the traditional sense. His true mission was far more subtle. He observed his surroundings with an analytical eye. Each alien attack was a puzzle, each response an opportunity to learn. The Vorax, for instance, were aggressive, but they lacked strategy beyond brute force. The Itharian soldiers' strength was undeniable, but their reliance on physical power left them vulnerable to more nuanced tactics. The Venar, while powerful in their energy manipulation, were not used to facing enemies who could outsmart them. Hale's calm was a stark contrast to the panic growing among his team members. They were struggling, their morale crumbling with each failed attempt to turn the tide. Several of them began to voice their concerns, questioning whether they should continue. One soldier, Private Thomas, whispered to Hale, "We can't win this, look at them, they're tearing us apart. Should we just call it quits?" Hale's gaze shifted to Thomas, and with a reassuring nod, he said, "We're not here to win, Private. We're here to learn. Keep fighting. Trust the plan." At that moment, the subtle brilliance of Hale's tactics began to reveal itself. As the human team continued to falter, they inadvertently lured their alien opponents into a carefully crafted trap. The jungle terrain, once an obstacle, became an asset. By feigning weakness, the human forces led the Vorax and Iltharians into narrow canyons where their superior size and strength became a hindrance. Hale's team, though battered and bruised, used their agility and resourcefulness to set up ambush points. The Vorax, eager for the kill, charged into these traps, falling prey to hidden explosives and well-placed sniper shots. The Iltharians, too, were lured into a maze of pitfalls and diversions, their enhanced senses no match for the cunning of the humans. As the battle drew to a close, the alien forces were forced to retreat, their forces decimated by a series of well-executed traps. Humanity's failure had been nothing more than an elaborate misdirection. Captain Hale had sacrificed short-term losses for long-term gains. While the alien factions believed they had crushed humanity, Hale had orchestrated the chaos to his advantage. As the simulated battle ended, the arena fell silent. The aliens, once smug and confident in their superiority, were now left to process the unexpected turn of events. They had been fooled into thinking humanity was weak, but in reality, the humans had just demonstrated a level of strategic brilliance that they could never have anticipated. "Did you see that?" whispered Lieutenant Anders, a member of Hale's team, his voice filled with awe. "They thought we were done for, but you had them right where you wanted them." Hale smiled faintly, his eyes scanning the alien crowd. "The battle isn't over yet," he said quietly. "This is just the beginning." The audience, both alien and human, stood in stunned silence, the outcome of the trial now uncertain. What the galaxy had once thought to be a failure was turning into something much more dangerous for the alien species. Humanity had just begun to show them what they were truly capable of. The battle raged on, and the alien forces believed themselves on the brink of victory. Humanity's apparent disarray had convinced them that they were nothing more than an afterthought, a relic of a primitive species that could never hope to keep up with the galaxy's powerhouses. But as the dust settled and the alien warriors regrouped, Captain Jonathan Hale stood motionless in the center of the battlefield. The human forces had pulled back, allowing the enemy to think they had gained the upper hand. From the shadows, Hale surveyed the carnage with a cold, calculating expression. He had been playing a game, one that the alien factions couldn't even begin to understand. Humanity's true strength lay not in overwhelming force, but in the ability to adapt, to learn quickly, and to improvise when the odds were stacked against them. It was a simple yet effective tactic that none of the alien species had considered: guerrilla warfare. The terrain, the environment, and even the alien psychology were all tools to be exploited. The Vorax, with their brute strength, had been lured into the maze of the jungle, where they were forced to navigate narrow canyons and treacherous paths that rendered their size and strength irrelevant. The Iltharians, powerful as they were, had fallen prey to the simplest of traps: diversions. Using their advanced perception against them, Hale's team created chaos, allowing the Iltharians to focus on false threats while the humans struck where they least expected. And then there were the Venar, masters of energy manipulation. Their weapons were terrifying in their raw power, but they had no defense against one of humanity's greatest strengths: adaptability. Hale's forces had learned to use the environment, shifting and weaving to make themselves nearly impossible to target. They knew the value of patience, of waiting until the perfect moment to strike. It was then that Hale made his move. The next challenge in the competition had been set: an all-out assault between the human forces and an elite squad of alien soldiers from each species. The arena was wide open, a barren field designed for direct combat. The aliens had the advantage. They were confident, armed to the teeth with their superior technology. But Hale's calm demeanor never wavered. He had already set the stage for the final phase of his plan. As the signal to begin the combat rang out, Hale signaled for his team to fall back. For a moment, the humans disappeared from view, vanishing into the landscape as the alien forces charged forward, eager for an easy victory. The audience watched in confusion as humanity's forces seemed to retreat without firing a single shot. The twist came swiftly and without warning. As the alien forces advanced, confident that they were pursuing the fleeing humans, they found themselves ambushed from all sides. Explosions rang out, smoke and dust filled the air, and the once confident alien soldiers were caught off guard. Hale had set up traps, hidden explosives, concealed sniper positions, and sophisticated diversion tactics that used the environment to its fullest potential. In moments, the tide had turned and the aliens were suddenly on the defensive, fighting for their survival. The alien commanders scrambled to adjust their strategies, but it was too late. The Vorax, whose strength had once seemed unassailable, were now outflanked, caught in the very traps they had once thought were impossible. The Eltharians, with all their genetic perfection, were now the prey, unable to adapt to the sudden chaos. And the Vener, so sure of their energy weapons, found themselves neutralized by the sheer unpredictability of humanity's tactics. It was in the midst of this chaos that the Galactic conspiracy began to unravel. Hale, ever vigilant, had noticed the subtle signs of sabotage during the earlier challenges. His team had been given faulty equipment, their paths blocked by seemingly insignificant obstacles. But it wasn't just incompetence, it was deliberate interference. Someone within the Galactic Council had been pulling strings, rigging the competition to ensure humanity's failure. Using his knowledge of the Council's inner workings, Hale quietly gathered his evidence. He had suspected this from the beginning, but now he had the proof. As the alien forces struggled to recover from the ambush, Hale made a strategic decision. He would expose the conspiracy. He had known this moment would come, and he was prepared. Using a secure transmission, Hale broadcasted the evidence to the entire arena. Footage of the tampered equipment, intercepted communications from a hidden faction within the Galactic Council, and reports from inside sources revealing the sabotage. As the proof went public, a wave of disbelief swept through the alien ranks. The Dral counselor, once so confident in humanity's weakness, was stunned. The Vener diplomat and Eltharian general exchanged furious glances, realizing they had been deceived. The entire competition had been a farce, a setup designed to break humanity's spirit before they even had a chance to prove themselves. With the conspiracy exposed, the true test of humanity began. The competition was no longer just about raw strength or advanced technology. It had evolved into a battle of willpower, resilience, and ingenuity. Humanity had faced the impossible odds stacked against them, and rather than folding, they had turned the tables on their adversaries. Captain Hale, now fully in control of the narrative, used the rift caused by the conspiracy's exposure to rally the remaining alien factions against each other. No longer was the focus on humanity's failure. It was now about the scandal that had shaken the Galactic Empire to its core. The alien factions, once unified in their disdain for humanity, were now fractured, distrustful of each other, and uncertain of how to proceed. The audience, once so smug in their superiority, was now on edge. The underdog species had not only survived the competition, but they had outwitted the galaxy's most powerful races. What began as a simple test of strength had transformed into a grand political and military spectacle. With humanity at the center of it all, the momentum was shifting. Humanity had proven their worth not through technology or sheer force, but through strategy, cunning, and the determination to survive. In the face of overwhelming odds, humanity had risen. Captain Hale stood tall, his voice steady as he addressed the alien leaders. "We've shown you what we're made of. Now it's time for you to recognize the truth. We are not your enemies. We are your equals." As the alien leaders began to reconcile the new reality, Hale's team stood by, watching the events unfold. The message had been delivered loud and clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They were a force to be reckoned with. The competition had become more than just a test. It was a war for recognition, a fight to prove that humanity, despite all odds, belonged in the galactic order. And in that moment, it was clear. Humanity had won. The galaxy would never be the same again. The arena was a storm of chaos as the battle raged on. Humanity's forces, once the laughingstock of the Galactic Empire, were now proving themselves to be the most dangerous species on the field. Captain Hale stood at the heart of the action, his mind sharp, his eyes calculating every move of the enemy. The once proud alien forces, so certain of their superiority, were now in disarray, caught off guard by the guerrilla tactics and relentless strategy employed by the human infantry. The battlefield was nothing like the sterile, controlled simulations the aliens had expected. The landscape was filled with traps, false flags, and decoys, making it nearly impossible for the alien commanders to track the movements of the human forces. The Vorax, despite their sheer strength and size, were quickly learning that their brutish tactics had no place in this new kind of warfare. They charged through the terrain with reckless abandon, only to be picked off one by one as human snipers, concealed in the dense foliage, picked their targets with deadly accuracy. The Iltherians, who had once relied on their physical prowess to dominate any battle, found themselves in a similar bind. They were fast, yes, but their overconfidence in their enhanced abilities made them predictable. As they launched into combat, eager to crush the humans beneath their superior strength, they were lured into the labyrinthine paths Hale had set up, paths that led them into close-quarter skirmishes where their enhanced strength was no longer an advantage. The human forces, using their knowledge of the terrain and their ability to adapt on the fly, brought down the once feared Iltherians in droves. Their armor, designed to withstand blunt force, was ineffective against the sharp, precision strikes of the human infantry. The Vener, masters of energy manipulation, were no better off. Their energy weapons, designed to disintegrate anything in their path, began to falter against the tactical brilliance of Hale's battalion. The humans used their agility, their unpredictability, and their superior knowledge of countermeasures to overwhelm the Venar's complex systems. By using the environment to their advantage, humanity created energy shields out of scraps of alien technology, bending the Venar's own weapons against them. The once confident Venar soldiers were left stunned, watching as their mighty energy blasts were absorbed and deflected, leaving them vulnerable to a devastating counterattack. Through it all, Hale moved like a ghost, never seen but always present, a force of nature on the battlefield. He commanded his battalion with a calm precision that the alien forces could never anticipate. His orders were sharp and decisive, guiding his team through each new wave of enemies with impeccable coordination. It was no longer just about fighting. It was about outsmarting, outthinking, and ultimately breaking the alien will to fight. Hale had turned the tide. What had started as a massacre for humanity was now a full-blown counteroffensive, one that caught even the alien commanders by surprise. The once unshakable arrogance of the galactic powers began to falter. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The Draal, who had once believed themselves the most powerful of all species, were now on the back foot, their psychic powers barely able to match the ingenuity and resilience of the human forces. They had tried to crush the humans with sheer mental might, but the more they tried to predict their movements, the more the humans adapted, throwing off their calculations and forcing them to make mistake after mistake. For every mental assault the Draal unleashed, there was a human countermeasure waiting. Whether it was a decoy, a calculated distraction, or a simple but effective tactic that made their psionic strikes miss by inches. And then, in the middle of the battle, Hale made his move, the final play that would turn the competition on its head. With the alien forces in disarray and humanity on the verge of total victory, Hale turned to his communications officer. "Prepare the last phase. We hit them hard and we hit them fast." The human forces withdrew slightly, giving the illusion of retreat. The alien factions, eager to finish the job and claim their victory, pressed forward, thinking they had the humans cornered. The Eltharian general, whose hubris had been shattered but whose pride still burned hot, led the charge, his soldiers in tow. The Venar, with their energy weapons recharged and ready, followed suit. The Vorax, eager for the final kill, surged, forward like a stampede, all of them pushing into the narrow canyon that Hale had expertly mapped out. It was then that Hale's plan unfolded. With a simple command, the human forces triggered a massive synchronized strike that sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The narrow canyon became a death trap, the ground beneath them rigged with explosives, and the skies above them filled with deadly projectiles. The Eltharian general barely had time to react before he and his soldiers were caught in a violent explosion, their bodies hurled through the air as the human forces unleashed everything they had left. The Venar, once untouchable with their energy manipulation, found their powers neutralized by an ingenious human countermeasure, an electromagnetic pulse that disabled their weapons, leaving them vulnerable to close-quarters combat. The Vorax, too, found themselves caught in the chaos. Their thick armor, designed to absorb blows, was no match for the coordinated onslaught of human infantry. Hale's battalion, using the alien terrain against them, closed in with overwhelming precision, using speed, agility, and tactics to break the Vorax ranks and neutralize their greatest advantage, strength. As the dust began to settle, the alien forces were reeling. The Draal, the Eltharians, the Venar, and the Vorax had all been caught in a trap of humanity's making. The arena, once a symbol of galactic might, was now littered with the wreckage of alien technology and the bodies of their most elite soldiers. The humans had turned the tide in a battle that at the beginning had seemed unwinnable. But the climax was yet to come. At the center of the arena stood Hale, his eyes locked on the Venar commander, a once arrogant leader who had openly mocked humanity's chances. This was the final showdown, the moment where humanity's fate would be sealed. The Venar commander, realizing that he had been outwitted at every turn, stepped forward, his crystalline form shimmering with anger. "This is impossible. You should not have won." Hale's voice was calm, almost casual as he spoke. "You're right. We shouldn't have won. But here we are." In a final, stunning maneuver, Hale and his forces surrounded the Venar commander, cutting off any hope of escape. The alien leader, a being once seen as the ultimate symbol of power, now found himself cornered by humanity's unyielding will. The battle had been won, not through superior technology, but through the sheer determination of those who refused to bow to the galaxy's arrogance. And with that, the Venar commander fell, his forces utterly defeated. The once mighty alien army had been broken by a species they had deemed insignificant. Humanity had emerged victorious. As the alien commanders, their faces filled with disbelief and rage, retreated from the battlefield, the human forces stood, tall, their heads held high. The audience, once so sure of the inevitable outcome, now erupted into stunned silence. The impossible had happened. The underdogs had won, proving that humanity's true power lay not in technology or brute force, but in their ability to adapt, to outthink, and to overcome even the most insurmountable odds. The galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. The arena was still, the dust settling over the once chaotic battlefield. The alien forces that had been so confident in their victory now lay scattered, broken, and defeated. The once imposing structures and machines that had showcased their technological superiority were now in ruins, remnants of a dream they had believed was invincible. Humanity had risen, and in doing so, had shattered the grand illusion of the galaxy's unchallenged dominance. Captain Jonathan Hale stood at the center of the arena, his posture resolute and his gaze unwavering. The battle had been won, not by brute force or by the superior technology of other races, but by something far more powerful: humanity's ingenuity, adaptability, and relentless determination. He had led his team with precision, and now, as the alien representatives slowly gathered, the weight of their disbelief hung in the air. They could not deny it. Humanity had proved them wrong. As the alien leaders of the Dral, Venar, Iltharians, and Vorax began to regroup, their once condescending stances had shifted. They no longer sneered at humanity's weakness. Instead, they regarded them with a mixture of respect, fear, and grudging acknowledgement. The Galactic Council, which had once seen humanity as an insignificant species unworthy of inclusion in the galactic order, now found themselves facing a truth they had long refused to accept. Humanity was not just another race. It was a force to be reckoned with. Captain Hale stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room of alien representatives. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of their collective realization. They had thought themselves invulnerable, convinced that the natural order of the galaxy would always favor the established powers. But now, their superiority was nothing more than a fragile myth. The Dral counselor, his immense psychic presence now subdued, spoke first, though his voice was strained. "We misjudged you, human. Your tactics were unorthodox but effective. It is clear that you have earned a place here." The Venar diplomat, once smug and aloof, now stood with an air of cautious respect. "Your adaptability is remarkable. We did not foresee the effectiveness of your strategies. We acknowledge your victory." The Iltharian general, his face grim, nodded slowly, his pride wounded. "We underestimated you, a mistake I will not soon make again." For the first time since the competition began, the alien leaders seemed to agree on something. Humanity's triumph was undeniable. The long-standing arrogance that had colored their perception of the human race had crumbled. They had come to understand that humanity's strength lay not in the weapons they wielded, but in their ability to evolve, adapt, and overcome. But it was not just the alien factions that had been shaken. The galaxy itself had changed in that moment. The Galactic Council, once a monolithic body of seemingly unshakable power, now found itself faced with a new reality. Humanity could no longer be ignored. They had earned their place, and with it came an undeniable shift in the balance of power. At the center of it all stood Captain Hale, the man who had led humanity to this moment of triumph. His eyes were cold, calculating, but there was an unmistakable satisfaction in the way he surveyed the scene. This was not a victory born of sheer luck. It was the culmination of careful planning, brilliant strategy, and a refusal to bow to anyone, no matter how powerful. He had outwitted the galaxy's finest, and now he stood as humanity's representative, a symbol of their newfound power. But there was one more figure who had to be dealt with. The one who had orchestrated the HFY sabotage from the very beginning. The Venar commander, who had dismissed humanity as nothing more than a nuisance, now stood before Hale, his posture stiff with humiliation. The commander had been one of the chief architects of the conspiracy, the one who had tried to crush humanity before they even had a chance to prove themselves. But now, he was nothing more than a broken figure, forced to face the consequences of his arrogance. "You," the Venar commander began, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You should have never been allowed to compete. This was never meant to be your victory." Hale stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. "You should have learned by now," he said, his voice low and firm. "Never underestimate humanity. We may not have your fancy technology or your superior strength, but we have something far more dangerous: the ability to adapt, to learn, and to survive. You thought you could break us. Instead, you gave us the chance to prove who we really are." The Venar commander recoiled as Hale's words hit their mark, his arrogance stripped away like a veil. "You will pay for this," he spat. But there was no conviction in his words, only the hollow remnants of a defeated leader. Hale's eyes narrowed as he stood tall. "No," he said simply. "You already have." The words were a final blow, a reminder of the price the galaxy would pay for underestimating humanity. The alien leaders, once united in their disdain for humanity, now found themselves fractured. The Venar, the Iltharians, the Vorax, and the Dral all were forced to contend with the same undeniable truth. Humanity had triumphed. Their plans had been exposed, their arrogance shattered. They could no longer hide behind their superior technologies or their centuries-old traditions. Humanity had made its mark and the galaxy would never forget it. But as the tension in the arena began to subside, there was a sense of unease among the human representatives. They had won, yes, but there were still battles to be fought. The Galactic Council, though acknowledging humanity's victory, was not likely to forgive so easily. The old power structures were shaken, but they were not destroyed. There would be consequences, and the struggle for humanity's place in the galaxy was far from over. As the alien leaders began to retreat, their eyes never leaving Hale, the weight of the moment settled over him. He knew that this victory had set the stage for something far larger, something that would change the course of history. Humanity had proven its worth, but the political and military challenges ahead would be immense. The galaxy was no longer a place where humanity could simply survive. Now it would have to navigate the complex web of power, politics, and conflict that came with such prominence. Captain Hale turned, his gaze fixed on the horizon beyond the arena. He could feel the weight of the galaxy pressing down on him, but he also felt something else, a sense of possibility. Humanity had secured its place in the galactic order, but the journey was just beginning. There would be enemies, both old and new, lurking in the shadows. The competition was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun, and Hale was ready. As the final scene unfolded, the camera pulled back, showing the vast expanse of the galaxy. The stars stretched infinitely into the unknown, and humanity now stood among them, not as a weak, insignificant race, but as a new power to be reckoned with. The galaxy had only begun to feel the true power of humanity, and its future was wide open. The final shot lingered on Hale's face, a quiet smirk playing on his lips. The era of humanity's dominance had begun, and with it, a new chapter in the history of the galaxy.